So it was time to think about episode 4 of The Grass Fence for me, and it was May by now. I made a few hasty notes and then got a palette together of warm oranges and cooler blues mostly, and then looked at a bit of the footage from the fence. I don't know, I mean, things must go in as you experience and sort of digest and work with. I started off then with quite bright colours. The more vibrant ones in the middle and the darker of the same sort of hue, so oranges out to browns on the outside. And this is onto canvas board, and with canvas board you just have to work it quite well in, like I am right now, or use a heat gun. And then the blue on the other side. Sometimes I use a bit of abrasive paper on the canvas board to help the grip. And the idea was that I was just going to push through like this with the edge of the iron, and you can see that the orange on the canvas board is holding its space quite well as I push the blue over it. And I really liked what happened on the right hand side here, these shapes. And now just putting a bit of blue, which is probably looking greyish black, over the orange again. A bit of brighter sort of focus. It's just a quick piece and polishing as I like to. And there you go. You can see this wax is quite thin really compared to some. It's got quite a fragile surface, but it's amazing what you can do with it. It's really quite beautiful. Now another interesting surface is watercolour paper. This is quite thick watercolour paper, and I'm starting with white wax and a bit of sort of minty colour just to build up a background. I don't quite know where it's going to go yet, but I do know now, because the memory of my mind has thought of that barbed wire again. So I'm going to put a line carefully into this piece. It's important because this line defines what the picture hangs on. Sometimes things go wrong, and you just have to make the best of them. So, lucky for me, I can use this form as a clump of grasses caught in this barb and just work it out. I mean, you've got to work with it, so another barb, and just keep building, you know. If something happens that you didn't expect, don't upset yourself about it. Just find a solution, move on. So now I can decorate this with the theme of my whole project, grasses. All the time I'm just using the iron here, toning in the colours, and then a little bit of finer detail. And I'm happy with that, but it doesn't feel strong enough yet, so I'm putting some dark colour. This is a darker version of the sky colour really. Line it all up, and then a bit of brown on the edge, wipe that down, polish, and then you can see it's much stronger because of that line at the bottom. This type of repetitive marking can give some great patterns if you look at the overlaps. Or it can just become more chaotic. repetitive marking over and over, turning the card as I go. Then creating some contrasting strokes. A few more then to blend it all together. But it needs to highlight. It's just lost there, so whilst it's still warm, just take the tissue and wipe it gently. I managed to crumple that edge as I was doing that. The iron cable gets twisted a lot and can be quite fragile where it leaves the rubber protector, so sometimes I use black tape and that does help strengthen it. So if you find it's wearing at all, just use a bit of black insulation tape and strengthen it, and that'll be much stronger then. So I've got 35 minutes left on my tape probably, and a blank canvas here, and I need to do something, and I'm not really quite sure what's going to come out, but I'm going to use a hot air gun, I know that much. A hot air gun with a temperature dial is helpful, and these different airflow settings, cold, low, fast, different speeds, you'll hear those on the film. And the nozzle gets very hot. You can burn the cable, look what I've done, just by carelessness, but lucky for me, everything's been okay. So be careful with your hot air gun, test the temperature before you start. And I'm just going to use clear wax. So I hold the gun in my left hand. I'm right-handed generally, so I use the clear wax in my right. And I'm just going to work that right the way over this surface of this canvas. And the idea of that is so that everything's wetted and has a decent grip on the surface of the canvas. Not quite hot enough, so turn it up. And I'm sort of laying in the basic shapes, I suppose. I don't really quite know what I'm doing, but I'm just beginning. It's obviously some sort of landscapey format with the sky and now some heavier colouring at the bottom. And the canvas is moving about a lot. I don't know if you noticed that, but you'll see it moves around. And in the end, it really annoyed me. I decided I'm going to tape the canvas down and see if that makes a difference. So I got on my masking tape, which I love, and I very carefully taped both ends actually, I'm only showing you one, and then tested it out. It was still wobbling a bit, so I put one along the long edge and then it was rock solid. So the next thing was that came to me anyway, was to blend these colours that I'd put on with some white. So I'm holding a white block in my hand now, and then just working across the colours that are already existing that I've now put in. You can see the pastelisation happening. This lower blue here, watch how this goes into a soft colour. Working up the lines, following the lines as I do that. So heat up, and then you can see the wax catching because it's melting. The trick is to keep the whole thing warm. This is a palette knife. I thought I'd try taking some thinner lines through. And when I'd sort of done a basic background, it was time to put in the first object. And obviously I'm now making a fence post. And if I can get the first one right, then I'm fairly confident that the rest will follow. So just like carefully put in, I'm feeling this, all the way feeling it. I'm feeling it with my eyes. I don't really know what it's going to look like at the end. But now I'm dragging it out, making a dimension out of it, adding a bit more weight, a bit more form along the bottom. And all the time it's solidifying, the idea is becoming more real, and I'm working straight on with the blocks. Now this is a really fine line. You have to use a fresh sort of corner of a block if you want to get a line as thin as this. And it's very, very light. It's just the right temperature. Now putting in darker colour, and this is obviously going to be the bank on which my grassy fence stands. And here just gently drawing in. I work very quickly. I am good at sort of scribbling. I think I've said that before. So it's almost like I just scribble this all together. Obviously this is well speeded up. Now the stylus gives much sharper lines, and so it's lovely for these squiggly things and some highlights. Just touch it down, make your marks. I enjoy doing all of those. And again, using the stylus to strengthen up, to add more exact lining, more edges. And all the time the hot air gun is quietly keeping the thing at the right temperature. And when I'm not using it, I just point it upwards like it is now. So down, and then when I don't need it, I point it up. This is one of my favourite bits. Just really feeling very free. And now highlighting the wires that I've suggested are there. A little bit of lighter colour to tie in with the scribbles I did earlier. And cleaning. So I'm just making sure that the post is still at the front. Splatters, well, I have to do a few of them every now and then. So I did a bunch of them and heated them in. Put a few little marks through them. And that was it. Just the edges left to do. So I'm leaning the middle of the back of the frame on the table, and the bottom of the picture is resting on my legs. Quick polish. But sometimes it's nice to use a stocking and or tights, something like that. This gives a really good polish. Do it gently, but a lot of the European people use that. And there we have it. So working on stretch canvas, yeah, it's good. So long as you make the initial coating of wax hot enough to really bond with a hot air gun is ideal. That's the best way, really. And then within the picture, there are many other little pictures. We just have to look, become aware. I'm really going to have to rush this now because I've only got 10 minutes left on my tape. Well, I managed to goof up the first bit of tape, so the pressure was even more on then. I'm working onto the sealed Encaustic card, and I'm turning the iron up to a hotter than normal setting, not very much, but a bit hotter, because I'm dribbling wax, and I'm trying to melt a lot of wax quickly, and also I want the iron to be hot. And when it's not hot enough, because the surface takes temperature out of its base, then use the hot air gun to help spread all that around. It's important to get clear wax all over. Now you can add your colours on, and you can see that the way I do that is consistently to move the iron across the wax block. So I hold the wax block fairly steady, and I actually wriggle the iron because I'm right-handed. And then I flip off anything that's left, or use another block just to push it off. It's all going to mix together anyway. And then just clean the iron off a bit at the end, put some different colours on, a bit of greens. This is real speed and this is a slow one. Clean the iron, and now we're ready to go. So the first thing is to warm up the wax. And you must keep the hot air gun moving. I can't stress that enough. If you stop, then you'll blow holes through the wax coating. One of the things I find fascinating about hot air work is the forms that emerge. Like all these could be characters. This blue is the cool element, the water element. And then the red that is just being blown out now, that's more of the fire element. And when you're working with heat as a solvent, you get quite etheric things happening sometimes. The hot air gun must be kept moving. If you notice each time it gets to the end of a stroke, you'll see a bit more movement of the wax. As I pass along, you can see it moving. The focus isn't very good in this, I realise that, but you can see the movement of the air pushing the wax each time it gets there. You don't want it to get too hot, you don't want to blast it too hard. So you've got to find the right temperature, the right distance for your hot air gun, all those things. And see how fast it moves. It actually moves very fast as you're blowing it. And I'm blowing it right the way off, right the way over the edge of that masking tape that I put on. Because the paint's already on there, I want the thing to work. And when you get little holes around the edges, just fill them in with your finger, or if that's too hot, then use a bit of tissue. And when you're working with hot air, or any hot tool, it's up to you to take responsibility. You've got to be careful. You know, it's no good blaming someone else. If you burn yourself, it's your fault. If you put the thing down and it starts a fire, it's your fault. Don't do that. Be vigilant. Now I'm just blowing back from the red across the blue. So blowing all those sort of blue characters that were there earlier on away. Because all I'm actually trying to do is to create a background into which I can work. And I think I've got to that point now. So with the stylus, I'm going to work straight onto this surface, and you can see I'm making sure that the whole surface is kept warmed. It should just be glistening at the right temperature. And then I work into it, and as I've done that first stroke with the stylus, I caught the edge of the plastic handle on there as well, so I just did another stroke straight away to work through that one. This isn't perfectly tidy at the moment, but I'm actually not quite sure how this fence is going to work out. Obviously I'm working on a fence again. But generally once you get into a rhythm, then the thing flows along. The first one's always important, so I'm getting this line right, and then fairly quickly I can work along. Now that the fence is done, quickly reorient the camera and put in some detail with the stylus. The hot air gun's still happening, it's still keeping it all going, there it is. And I'm just starting to again populate this fence on fire. It's like the grass fence is on fire here now. And I remember throwing some grasses up into the air when I was filming and watching them blow away, and that's how they would have first landed on that fence. So just little squiggles with the stylus. And this actually had quite an interesting effect when the picture was turned upside down. You'll see it later on at the end. Splatters, I seem to have to do those. I'm just pushing through them with the stylus to give a bit more interest. A bit more variety. And that's it. Time to take the tape off. I ripped the corner there, just very slightly. If you don't take the tape off now, it can get very difficult to take it off later on, so take it off pretty much while the thing's warm. And then polish it, but make sure you give it time to cool down. So hot air work can be a lot of fun. Very productive, very quick. Did that inside my 10 minutes, and there we have it. Grass fence on fire. So that was episode 4. What's next? I don't know. But thanks for watching and see you again. Bye.